Tell you. Just last checks. And okay. Facebook is going live and YouTube is going live. And probably we're live now.
No.
Okay.
Let's say we are.
Okay. YouTube thinks there are already 2 viewers waiting for the stream, and well, that's perfect.
I know the viewers in question.
Yeah, maybe. So hi everyone.
Hi.
Here we are once again, joining for our 5th live stream, and we're going to continue some of the topics related to Russian manuscripts and Russian book history, but not only that, there are some quite international news, so yeah, we'll see how it goes. And Pavel, how are you?
Hi. I'm great. I'm a teacher again. I haven't had I haven't taught anything yet, but I've already seen hundreds of my pupils, and I'm a bit.
A bit panicked, you mean, or a bit happy, or a bit.
Hopefully none of them are watching, so I can tell you that I'm not ready, like at all. So it's both exciting and scary.
So is it an international knowledge or day of knowledge? I don't know how it's called in English.
Like all international holidays celebrated in Russia, it's international only in the sense that former Soviet Union also knows what we are celebrating today. Because just among my relatives, some of them haven't gone to school yet, and a few of them have been have started like 2 weeks ago. So it's an international knowledge day, but well.
Okay. So first things first, we wanted to say a couple of words about future live streams. Pavel's schedule, Pavel's school schedule has changed a bit, so he will be able to do the recordings on Wednesdays this season, not on Fridays like before. So we're moving our live streams to Wednesdays. We probably will try to do something like we planned before, having some of the streams earlier in the day and some of the streams in the evening European time, so that some weeks people from Asia and Australia and New Zealand can join us, and on other days people from Americas can join us for the stream if they want. And the other thing that moves to Wednesdays is our recording of podcast. Not that it matters for our viewers and other members of the community besides the people who are interviewing at the moment, but yeah, we are turning to Wednesday like it was in 2020, I guess, in the early days of our podcast. So that's something that changed, and we are moving to our 3rd season with the podcast. The first season wasn't a full one because we started in April, and then Pavel joined me like in June or something, and then we finished our first season in July. So it was pretty abrupt, but still following the traditions of media, we are starting our season in autumn, and hence here is our 3rd season. We decided to tweak something. Well, this stream is one of the things that is new for our project. So this is one of the things we are introducing in our 3rd season. But we upgraded our equipment just a bit. You can see Pavel's microphone right in front of him, so you will be probably...
It's not like I'm flexing or anything. It has to be here, so...
Yeah. Well, my microphone is hidden. I don't know. Maybe you are still flexing. But yeah, hopefully you will hear Pavel much better now without any scratches and noises and all that stuff. So we're trying to be better, at least in this way. And The other thing I wanted to say, once again, like the previous time, if there are any members of our community who are willing to join and to volunteer in helping us with proofreading the subtitles for the Spanish and French versions of our podcast, and maybe helping with some other stuff, including translation between French, Spanish, and English, that would be really nice, because we definitely don't have any budget to cover all these things through, I don't know, translation agencies or something like that. There are some options I reserved, like AI translation, and there are some promising options on the market now, but we'll see how it goes. I haven't even approached the company I want to try working with. We'll see a bit later. So yeah, please tell us if you are willing to help us. We will appreciate that a lot. Of course, we already have support from our patrons on Patreon who pay us money so that we can edit our podcasts, and we appreciate this help quite a lot. And if you are thinking about joining the crowd, pledges start with only $1, €1, £1, depending on your country, and well, the link is in the description of the stream and in the description of any of our podcast videos. So please check the link and join, or not join. Just like this video and subscribe to our channel. That would be enough. Next, if you have any questions today during our talk, just send a comment on Facebook or on YouTube. Anywhere, we'll try to answer your question. If we don't know, we will reserve it for the next time. Maybe invite some person who is professional in the field that you ask your question in, and we'll try to answer your question anyway. Moving forward, Pavel had something to show us today, and we have several topics that are sort of connected with each other, even while they are related to different cultures, different countries, different traditions. But, well, almost everything is about medieval manuscripts and books today. So, Pavel, here you are.
So, a few days back, I went to the Museum of the History of Moscow. It's a great museum, and you know the sort where you come and you can see mammoth bones and 18th century shoes and the oldest log in Moscow, which is apparently 10th century. Lots and lots of ceramics, and most relevant to our topics of interest, examples of writing. So I thought I'd show you what kind of writing a person living in medieval Moscow would have been surrounded with. By the way, I use term medieval not like I'd use it when talking about European context, because Middle Ages basically end in the 15th century almost everywhere. But in Russia...
Except Russia, yeah. They continued until the 19th century.
But I don't know, about 19th century, sometimes it feels like we're still somewhere in that time period. But certainly 15th, 16th and 17th century are well and truly medieval in feel.
Before you proceed with some photos, I wanted to tell that there are some comments on Facebook today. We received some comments on Facebook the stream before the last, but only at the end of the stream, when people started saying like, yeah, thanks very much for streaming, for talking about these subjects and so on. Today we have some early comments, and we have Martha West from United States, Pauline Angelus Noir. I'm sorry, I butchered this surname, from Melbourne, Australia. And it's pretty late in Australia, in Melbourne right now, I think. So hi everybody. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for watching. And I hope you will like today's stream and today's photos and today's topics. So Pavel, once again.
So a few photos. Let's start with this example, which I really like because it consists of letters that are all very familiar. I mean, if you know Russian or any Cyrillic-based alphabet at all, you'll recognize every single letter. But combining them into a word is a different matter altogether. I thought we'd play this sort of game with you with most of these examples. So this is a gravestone from a tomb by Bishop Ilarion. And bishop in Russian is metropolit. And perhaps you can try and find the word here. Can you see where it says metropolit?
I think it's third line from the bottom on the left.
Yeah, and I think it's a very typical example of what how they wrote this this sort of thing. I mean, it's a public inscription. And it's not meant for quick reading. It's not infographics, you know? It's not like exit that way. You're supposed to stand there and spend time with this inscription. So the first letter is M, but you can see that the second letter is attached to the first letter and is only half as tall. Then again we see T, then we see R, which is like English P, which is again attached to the letter. Then there is O that is underneath, and again P is on top, and more letters here. And I really like it's almost like a puzzle. It's an interesting way to engage the reader with the text. Because if it would be easy to read, you'd just pass it by. So I think it's probably best paralleled in modern terms with graffiti. It's like a tag, you know, when you see lots of letters and you need to spend like a couple of minutes to understand, and even if you know what it says, it takes some time. So there's one example of urban typographics. Here's a much less formal example. So like most inscriptions on pottery, it says who it's owned by, and it was certainly written by not by an elite person. I mean, it was either a potter or an owner of a simple jug, and so lots of people were literate, even though these are certainly Middle Ages and there were no schools outside church context. You can still see that common people could write and read. Because you don't write your name on something unless people around you can read it, right? Yeah. So here's another example on a very cute pot, and here you can probably read what the name of the owner was.
Человека Grigory.
Yeah, Grigory.
Grigory.
Yeah. So it's still readable.
Кувшин доброго человека Григория.
Yeah, so it's
pot of the good man Grigori.
Yeah,
jar of the good
Grigori's jug. He's a good guy, so please don't steal it. Yeah. And here's something completely different. This is certainly not in Russian. So there were communities of English, German, French, Polish traders all over the center of Moscow, and some of them didn't just live in Moscow; they died in Moscow. And here's one example. So this, where's his name? Where's his name? What's his name? Kasper. The very first name, the very first word is his name. What's interesting about it that the overall design and the decoration of the stone are clearly local. So I've seen gravestones of this age that look basically the same but written in Cyrillics. But the letters themselves weren't cut by a Russian craftsman. It's just not plausible that someone who's never written or read Gothic script would write anything like it, because of the shapes of the letters, like the H in the last line, or the digraphs in the second line. So it was written by someone skilled in writing German script. So we see not just rich people from foreign lands living in Moscow, but also craftsmen from Europe also living here, which I think is interesting for the mid 16th century. It's quite impressive. You don't necessarily think of common people traveling from Europe to Moscow and settling here. This is something that we've seen a lot by now. This is birch bark and the stylus. There were also a number of manuscripts. Again, we've seen this time and time again. Decorated book edge and even gilded book edge. I think it immediately signals that the book was meant to look good on its own. So it was meant to impress. It was clearly standing or lying somewhere. It was probably lying something like this in a church library, and you'd invite a patron who probably paid for the creation of this book, and show him where his money went.
Okay. Distraction.
I mean, we still do that. Just today, I had to rearrange computers in my class so that I could show them to the men who gifted them to our school. So, and they also look nice. It's important. And there were also printed books. This is 17th century. This is something of a school book, but for adults. And again, you can clearly see European influence here, both in images and in the structure of the text. But you can also see clear Slavic influences in the shape of initial, which is very similar to some of the oldest initials from 500 years earlier.
Interestingly, can you return to the previous picture? I think the word in the lower part of the page, is it some footnote, or is it the first word of the next page? Is it traditional?
It's the first. Yes, because it's the first word of the next page, and it is also. You're absolutely right, and it's also a sign of European influence, because Russian books, especially Russian manuscripts, never had that.
Well, the never had that until which month, because as far as I know, the liturgical books have this I don't know feature since quite some time ago. I sort of got used to seeing this I don't know the name for this word, how it's called, because it definitely has some sort of
There is a term,
proper
but
name.
I can never remember.
Yeah,
which
but
one,
you
yeah.
usually can see it closer to the right corner, right bottom corner of the page, and sometimes it's made painted with red paint instead of black paint. But here it is in a different script, and in the
It's
center.
clearly written manually.
Okay.
So somebody was using it to read from, because it's the only reason that you add those things, because you turn the page, and while you're turning the page, you need to know what to say. It's similar to how early music notation and even modern music notation sometimes uses a preview of what to play on the next page. I also adore this example because most gravestones are not colored, and like with Roman or Greek statues, we're used to thinking of medieval cemeteries as thoroughly monochrome affairs. And yet here you can see that there are at least two colors, both of them expensive. Both red and blue are expensive colors. You need minerals to make them, and I like how fun it is. I mean, there is no logic to what color is used for which letters. You can probably read the last line, at least the beginning of it.
Раб Божий Рома.
Yes, yeah.
Roma Fo. I don't know. Fomich.
Yes, so
Raman. I see.
Yes,
now.
so
Yeah,
Raman, son of Foma, slave of God. Yeah, and the very first word, Rab, slave, the three letters. The first letter is in red, the second is in blue, the third is in red. Just for the fun of it, I think. You don't think of cemeteries
No,
as fun?
the third letter is upstairs. It is over the A. And B is I think red are the first letters of the words.
Oh, so there is
some
logic.
look.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
You're right. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they didn't use breaks between words, but here they went around it by using color. Oh, that's even better.
I like this object so much that I used it. I posted this photo on our Instagram account, and my wife, who is usually editing the photos for our Instagram account, well, she wasn't very happy with the coloring of the photo, because the lighting in the museum seems to be well, not the best. It was really hard to edit this photo, because you are saying that the second color is blue, but from this side of the screen, it's almost impossible to understand that it's blue. It's I don't know. It can be black, green, anything. But okay, we'll believe that it was blue.
Yeah, and you're certainly right about red letters being the first ones, because in the first line you can read name Simeon, and again S is in red. Yeah.
Or Semyonov.
Or the son of
maybe
Simeon,
that's patronymic. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I went to the exhibition, it's
because usually you do not visit exhibitions like that. Who wants to know anything about book history, lettering history of writing, anything like that? Yeah.
I mean, they haven't changed their permanent collection for 20 years. I've seen it over and over again. But But a month ago, they added one very important exhibit, and it's this one. We've talked about Birchbark manuscripts when I talked about my visit to Novgorod, and Novgorod is best known for this sort of material because well over 1,200 manuscripts were recovered there. But Novgorod is not the only place. There's about a dozen towns all over northern Russia and eastern Ukraine and Belarus, where
And since recently, one more town joined this club, and we will talk about it a bit later in the news section of today's live stream.
It's there are certain prerequisites for this sort of material to survive. It needs to be buried in wet clay, which has stayed wet since it's been buried. And there are lots of places,
or as far as I understand, in conditions when there is no access to oxygen. So that no oxygenation.
But how would you get those kind of conditions unless?
Well, in some box, because there is methane instead of oxygen.
Yeah. But again, it needs to be wet.
Okay, I don't know if it needs to be wet. I understand something about oxygen and stuff, because a couple of years ago there was an interesting find near St. Petersburg on the sunken ship. They found almost intact book, and it was intact because it was sealed in the sediment on the bottom of the sea, and somehow there were conditions where there was almost no oxygen there. So, well, in water there is always oxygen. So, probably we need to invite some specialists to talk about us about
Well, obviously there is also the options of a very dry and hot environment, like the sands of Egypt, where most of papyri have been found. But in Russia and Northern Europe, generally, this is the sort of condition that you find it in. In Moscow, there are not many places where you can even hope to find those kind of materials. But over the years, 4 birchbark manuscripts have been found.
Before you continue with this one, I wanted to read another comment from Facebook. Pauline, who joined us from Melbourne, from Australia, asks if you know anything about the pigments of the. I understand of the red and blue pigments that were used on the stone for the stone lettering. That's my guess, at least. Was there any information there? Do you remember anything about that?
Not on the labels, but I can hazard a guess. The red almost certainly comes from ochre. And the blue basically can either come from lazurite, which I doubt, because it was more expensive.
Too expensive.
Than gold at the time. Lazurite-based pigments were used in Russia. They were imported via Iran from the Afghan mines, which remained the only source of lazurite until the 19th century, I think, when...
For Russia?
No.
Or for
world over. Anything made of lazurite, starting from 5,000 years ago and until the 19th century, comes from one single mine in Afghanistan. I wonder what's going on.
So that's why everybody wants to have Afghanistan. Now we know that. British Empire, Russian Empire, American Empire, everyone wanted Afghanistan.
Of course, there were options. There were cheaper options. For textiles, there are some plant-based dyes, usually made out of roots of certain plants, but they are rarely applied to inscriptions. So that blue is probably also mineral based, but from a copper ore. That was available all through the Russian history. Also not local, mostly coming from the Ural Mountains, but it was available and much cheaper. And we even imported it to Germany, and you can find some examples of Russian dyes being used in cheaper altarpieces in northern Germany around the Baltic.
It should be some sort of oxidized copper something,
yeah.
or
Yeah. Copper oxide or a compound of copper oxide with some other inclusions.
Okay. Sorry.
So getting back to the manuscripts, 4 manuscripts have been found over the last 50 years, and this is the most recent one, found 15 years ago, and this is the first time it went on display. You can see its typical size for birchbark manuscript, about this big. You can see that it was prepared to be written on. It wasn't just something found in a skip. So you can see some kind of attention paid to it. It's a bit difficult to see what's written on it, but it's not very well defined, not very well preserved. But we can see the text on this website, where all birchbark manuscripts are collected. There is an English version, so you can read everything that was found. And as you can see,
can you send me the link, so I will post it in the comments section? So
yeah. So here you go.
Okay,
so as you can see, here are the letters. Again, there are no breaks between them, and there were none in neither in inscriptions nor in outside printed books and some manuscripts. Almost never you see any breaks between words in Russian text. So there's a nice option of this site. I really like this. Hop. So the text itself is rather interesting, I think. It says, we went to Kostroma, which is a city not far from Moscow, but Yuri and his mother said us to go away and took some money from us. And interestingly, at about the same time, the manuscript itself cannot be dated directly from what it says. There is no date, and there weren't many finds around it to date it precisely. But judging from the general shape of the letters and where it was found, we can say that it's about late 14th century. And at that time, not far from Moscow, a certain Yuri and his mother were co-rulers of a city and a small state. It was well before the unification of Russian state. It was at the time when Russia was basically a part of the Golden Horde. So the Mongols were the rulers, and there were lots and lots of principalities ruled by an extended family of ever-feuding princes. And one of them wasn't fit to rule by himself, and his mother ruled with him. And we think that this is a report of a diplomatic mission, of a failed diplomatic mission. of the late 14th century, which I think is fun. I also wanted
So
to
you
show
you like when some other people get robbed and do not fulfill their diplomatic missions. That makes you happy.
especially when they fail at their mission because of a powerful woman.
Okay, this works.
Okay, so this was this is what a typical Birchbark manuscript looked like. About this size, a few lines of text, and in Novgorod, the biggest ones are about twice the size, so maybe 6 or 7 lines. But Moscow produced a real treasure. This wonderful thing. I've only seen it once, long time ago. I hope they gonna exhibit it again, but not yet. This is the third Gramota, the third Birchbark manuscript found in Moscow, and it is the largest Birchbark manuscript found anywhere.
I never saw it live, so well.
They never show it. I went to an exhibition dedicated to the centennial of the Russian archival service of all things, and they had it exhibited there. It's a big thing. I mean, you can see it's a full page of text.
Yeah.
It's not as interesting in terms of context. It lists what a certain rich person owned at the time, like this many horses, this many cows, etc., etc. But I think what it gives us.
So it's tax returns.
No. Well, that's what most writing records. Yeah. So, but I think it gives us some idea as to what the whole culture of Birchbark manuscripts was. Certainly, I'm sure this is not the only example that ever existed, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that we only get the scraps, we shouldn't imagine that this is all there ever was. And
well, it's quite reasonable that we get a lot of smaller manuscripts with some everyday day-to-day notes and scribbles, because this shows that this medium and this type of communication was widespread throughout Rus and throughout Slavic lands. And well, that's why we get so many of them, and so different in types of the news they bring to us. But yeah, it's interesting to see a larger object, and definitely if it was the only one large birchbark manuscript ever made, it would be just too lucky to find it. So there should have been more of them, but probably there were not as many of them as the smaller scribbles and notes.
And also, this particular document was clearly meant to be kept. It's not a scribble you send to your wife asking for a warm shirt. It's something that you keep and you compare it to other documents. So there was probably some kind of personal archive.
And as we know, something you want to keep really well, usually you put it in the place when you wouldn't forget where it is, and well, then it's lost forever.
And I think it's also inspiring for people who recreate books out of birchbark, because you can clearly make big text out of it. You can probably make a book out of birchbark. I think I've seen some small booklets as tourist trinkets, but you could also make a big book out of birchbark, and it would probably survive for centuries if you make it right. So this is my most recent museum visit. What's next for us?
So we wanted to talk about something that is called the Kievan Letter, and luckily we had a guest with whom we discussed a lot of different medieval manuscripts and objects, and specifically we talked about a lot of Jewish and Hebraic documents, because this person is the chief of the manuscript reading room in the okay, Pavel, you should remember you introduced him, but okay, well, that's my mistake. I should have written down the location, but well, I will run the video and Pavel will introduce him. The man is Alexander Gordian, and this is a part of a longer talk of a podcast episode that we will air at some moment this autumn, probably in October. There will be two parts, I guess, because I think we talked for 2 hours with Alexander, and we discussed a wide range of interesting topics, starting with medieval manuscripts and Jewish medieval manuscripts, findings in Genizas and in Cairo Geniza, some other stuff. I think Dead Sea Scrolls as well. I'm not sure, but I'm sure we mentioned them. We
talked about medieval manuscripts.
Yeah.
We talked about basically everything we could fit into 2 hours, and hopefully we'll continue again, because he was a very interesting man to talk to.
Yeah. And one of the things we discussed was this Kievan Letter, which is at least for now, it is supposedly the earliest manuscript or document that mentions Kyiv, one of the capital of Rus, Kievan Rus, and today's capital of Ukraine, by name. Before that, there were no documents that mentioned this city by names, besides, no documents. There were different myths and stuff, but no documents that would corroborate the name and the location. And so this is a 6-minute part of the video where Alexander talks about this and some other objects connecting Jewish world and medieval Rus and medieval Russia. So Pavel will speak, just talk for a moment, and I will switch the things so that we can start watching the video.
We should probably tell what Geniza is, because it's not explained in what he talks about. Geniza is a room in a synagogue where manuscripts, letters, and everything written in Hebrew letters, which is considered sacred, is preserved to gracefully disintegrate. It's considered not a sin, but not a good thing to do for a good Jewish man to just bury something written in Hebrew letters or throw it away. It's not in good taste. So in some places like Cairo, they preserved 1,000-year worth of manuscripts, and lots of things came out of there, and many of those manuscripts are now in Israel under the watchful eye of our guest.
Okay, so we're ready, and let's go.
This is Alexander Goldin. He's the head of the Manuscript Reading Room at the National Library of Israel. Hi, Alexander.
Hello.
Speaking of Jewish manuscripts in Russia, there is a little known fact that the first surviving document from anywhere in Russia is a Jewish document, a letter written from Kyiv and preserved in the Cairo and Geniza from before anything else, from a century before. but then you have to wait quite a few centuries before you can get a glimpse of what Jewish life was like in Russia. So what do we have in terms of Jewish manuscripts in Russia, and how did Slavic languages and life influence Jewish life?
We have some different, just fragments of what we could find. The Kievan Letter is indeed a very known thing. When it was found in Cambridge, there was a special book by Golb and Pritzek about all this, especially in the connection of the Khazarian theme and all that. On one hand, it's something exotic, and on another hand, it's indeed connected to the Russian history, Russian, Ukrainian. There are many, especially today, it's because it came from Kyiv. Actually, the letter itself, there is a little doubt about its history. I mean, no, it wasn't. The very document found in Cambridge wasn't written in Kyiv itself. It was sent, perhaps indeed through those lands of Khazar rule. And what we found in Cairo and then in Cambridge was a copy of it. We have the names of the testimony, and they all are written in the same hand. It's not the original letter where they just signed in Kyiv, but it was from the same period, very old one and very important for the history of the Jewish community there. It was written. Yeah, we have pretty much literature about it. There is a known article by Zuckerman about the history of it and its connection to Ashkenaz and also to Khazar world and all that. But this community was pretty clear, rather small one, and rather they themselves saw themselves as a community at the end of the world. They talked about Sambation, the river that is at the end of the known, of the civilized world. So we don't know much about it, but there are another already in the late Middle Ages. We have very interesting things from what today is Russia, Ukraine, especially from Crimea, and there we have serious communities of the Jews. Usually they used some Byzantine form of writing, perhaps with some Persian influence after that. We have a serious Karaim community. From there they came to the lands of Ukraine, Lutsk, Halish, all those places. In Kyiv, we have when it was actually Lithuanian. We have some interesting manuscripts, especially in astronomy, connected to the name of Moses from Kyiv. The figure which is also there is something written by Zechariah Cohen, was identified as the head of the heresy of the Judaizers. There was a very important thing in the 15th century. There's a story about some Jew called Zechariah who came from Kiev to Novgorod, and from there this heresy came even to Moscow, and how Tsar was involved in that, how was his attitude to that. It's a whole story, but it's not so clear if this Zechariah we have is indeed the head of that group, because we know that according to the Russian church sources, he was executed. This Zechariah, we found him after that in Damascus. So, yeah. But all this, it sounds perhaps very fragmentary, but those are indeed the sources. All we have connected to the Russian places and East European places connected to it are rather fragmentary. We have just some names, but this scholar Moses from Kyiv is indeed an interesting person. We have something written also for him, he studied astronomy in Constantinople, in Istanbul, and there is some manuscript wrote by his pupil. He calls him a teacher, so perhaps he indeed studied from Moses in Constantinople, and some names we can find there. But clearly, Russia was not among the main areas of the Hebrew book in the Middle Ages. Its time came after that.
So here we are.
Did you notice how I said that the letter was written from Kiev, and he answered that everyone nowadays thinks that it was written to Kyiv. Yeah?
Yeah.
So just today, literally hours ago, I talked to the leading scholar of the 10th century Russia, and he told me that, well, you see, hardly anyone thinks that it was written to Kyiv. Everybody agrees that it was written in Kyiv. And also he mentions Zuckerman, who wrote the defining book on the subject. And Zuckerman says that it was definitely written in 11th century. But then this guy I talked to today says it was definitely written in the 10th century. So the question of any sort of scholarly opinion.
I like how there are these small scholarly cliques, each of which thinks that there is definitely one solution and one meaning to this topic, and but nevertheless, it's really interesting that by the way, if you read some other sources, not all sources agree that it's Kyiv that's what's mentioned there, and there may be some opinions on that matter as well. But let's say it's Kyiv, and it's interesting that the third document that mentions Kyiv, if we agree with this hypothesis, is written in Hebrew, and it's a document definitely related to Jewish community, probably Jewish community in Kyiv or in Kievan Rus. And there is connection with Khazars, which is amazing, and probably obvious. If there is a Jewish connection, there probably should be connection with Khazars, and it's sort of joins so many traditions and topics and medieval things. I just love it. So
and also there is a name in this manuscript that I really like. The manuscript is a letter from the community of Kyiv.
Will you show us some pictures or?
Yeah. But I just want to mention one name that is in this manuscript, and it lists several people, and one of them is named Gastyata Bar Simon Cohen. So. A Russian name followed by a Jewish name, and he's also a Cohen, which is very weird, and all this in 10th century Russia. Okay, so I wanted to talk a bit more about it because we only mentioned it basically in passing in this talk, and I wanted to show a few more images. So here is the place where.
Can you switch? Can you switch to full screen?
I can try. I don't know.
F11. I know. Okay. Well, I guess we lost Pavel for a moment because he switched the flight mode. Sorry about this. F11 switched on the flight mode. This is amazing. Okay, but okay, now it's full screen at least.
Okay, so this is the place where the archive was found. All 400,000 manuscripts were in the top room in this wonderful synagogue in old Cairo. Rumors about the archive started to circulate in the late 19th century. So a few pieces appeared on the open market. A few Europeans heard about it. These two ladies came all the way from Scotland to investigate. They bought a few pieces and brought them to Solomon Schlechter, the leading Hebraist of the time. He managed to describe thousands and thousands of the biggest of the manuscripts. And to just give you some idea of what kind of material is there, I just wanted to give you a few of my favorite examples. Among the texts, there is a diary of a Catholic convert to Judaism. One of maybe 10 examples we know from the Middle Ages. In his diary he tells his story, and he also tells the story of the man who inspired him, who was this guy, Andreas, Archbishop of Bari, who during the Crusades converted to Judaism and moved to Palestine. I'm told that if you know Hebrew, you can still read these texts from 11th century. But the letter we are talking now about is in Cambridge. Like most of these archives, Solomon Schlechter found some considerable sum of money and bought most of the archive and brought it to Cambridge, where it's still being studied. Other parts are all over the world. I highly recommend websites of both Jerusalem Library and of Cambridge Library devoted to Cairo Geniza. There you can find this letter. I think immediately you can see that it's very much readable, although the place where the name Kyiv is written is frustratingly missing a small piece atop the first letter. So it's probably Kyiv, but we can't be sure.
Kyiv or Kyiv, I guess, because
Kyiv. B and V aren't distinguished, I think.
B and are written with the same symbol in Hebrew.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. So here it is, and just to mention what it's about. It's about a Jewish man from Kyiv who's never had any troubles with the law, but co-signed a loan for his relative, and when relative died, he had to pay it back and couldn't, and was enslaved. And now the community has paid 60 gold coins for him, and it's all they had, and they need 40 more, and they send one of their members all the way to Cairo to asking for help. Kyiv being mentioned in this manuscript is not the only interesting thing about this letter. We've mentioned Khazars, the nomadic overlords of Kyiv and its surroundings in the 9th century, and in the 10th century still big players in the region. And at the very bottom of the page you can see letters that are most definitely not Hebrew letters. Here they are in a bit bigger version. These are known as Turkic runes. It's probably the most famous example of this, but if you've been to Ankara, there is a very big stone in the center of the city covered with inscription, cut inscriptions in this script. There is also an example from southern Russia, just east of Urals, also a few monumental inscriptions in a hand rather similar to this one. What it says is basically, I've read this, Ilik. Ilik may be a name, but more likely is what he did. It's something like an assistant to a minister, if nomads had ministers, something like that, some kind of official.
Notary.
So, yeah, it's something like a notary. I really like these letters. They look made up to me. Not that other letters aren't initially made up, but I mean it's like something made for a sci-fi movie, you know.
Do you have a photo of the not a monument, how you say, memorization of a memorial of the for the Kievan Letter from one of the Kyiv streets in Kyiv among your photos?
No, I forgot to add it. Yeah, it's a very well-known document in Kyiv and basically nowhere else in Russia because it wasn't published in Soviet times.
Because I think this monument, I don't know, plaque. What word should you use for it? It shows it's in 3D and it's just interesting. You will talk and I will find the photo and I will send you so that you can edit.
Wanted to note that even when we too went to school, we weren't told about this document. And it was certainly not in any textbooks, and even scholars didn't have ready access to it because it was in Hebrew, because it was connected to Khazars, and Soviet historiography only talked about Slavic roots of Russian state, and it was only published in Russian in early 90s, I think, even though it was known and talked about a lot in Western Europe since the 50s.
Yeah, or 60s.
Oh, thereabouts.
Anywhere, middle of the 20th century.
So for 50 years, it wasn't used as a primary source, even though it is probably the oldest document coming from Russia.
I've sent you the link if you can show the photo, because I think it visualizes the object quite well. And
I just wanted to say that this argument of when it was written, late 10th or early 11th century, makes it either the earliest or one of the earliest documents. And we talked about its what's going on. Sorry.
Escape.
Yeah. So we talked about another document which could be either a bit earlier or a bit later, depending on the date. This one is pretty well dated. It's the Novgorod Codex, and it's dated 999. So it's the year 999 or year 1000. And the first book that survives, Ostromir Gospel, it's from 1050s or 1060s. And again, I'm just blown away by the progress. I mean, this is the oldest, and then comes this.
Yeah.
and now it stops. And
I'll just share the link to
and
Novgorod
here,
Codex.
and here is the bronze version. Yeah, I like I like it quite a lot.
As far as I understand, it's a part of a project of memorial objects put on the different streets in Kyiv, and yeah, you can see the project is Shukai, so it's search or in Ukraine, and yeah, and there are something like 24 of these objects on the street of Kyiv or something, or 30, I don't know.
God, I really miss Kiev. I haven't been able to visit for 10 years now, and I really like the urban fabric of the city. They have lots and lots of small plaques, small monuments, small statues. It's a city where you can see its history everywhere. I hope the politics will eventually allow us to come back.
Well, we need to get rid of Putin first, and then probably things will become better.
Or not.
Or not. We'll see. So, as you can see, somehow it all connects to each other and to some of the topics we discussed on our podcast earlier, and we'll be going to this. Now. We'll discuss in the future.
We're not going anywhere. We're staying.
We'll discuss in the future. And we also talked about some of the things related to today's topics during our previous live streams. So as usual, I just love how all of this connects, and this is the main part of our today's live stream. But we have some news for you, some bookish news, and not all of them are happy, but most of them are. And once again, some of them are connected to the topics we discussed today. So it's really nice how it all works out. And let me switch the screen once again, and just a moment. So it's the first piece of news is about Birchwood manuscript that was found recently, and Pavel will start talking about it, and I will share the screen with him so he can also talk.
So the city where it was found is called Ryazan. It's a very old Russian city. It's not precisely true to say that it's the first manuscript found there. There is a city called Old Ryazan. Well, what's left of a city. The Mongols, Han Bati, destroyed this one of the greatest Russian cities, and I visited it. What's left of it, which is nothing but lots and lots of space and big earthworks. And there they found something about this big, with three letters. So it's a very exciting news that they finally found a big manuscript in a new place, because usually when they find one, more will
there will
follow.
be more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting illustration you can see on your screens, because as far as I understand, that's how usually the birch bark manuscripts are found. They're rolled in these tight rolls, which are
99% of the time this is how you find them, which is why when you dig for them, they tell you not to throw away any pieces of birch bark, because they look like nothing. But if there is even one line inscribed on it, there is a chance that when you unroll it, there'll be a text.
Yeah. So and yeah, that's the place where they found this first manuscript, and hopefully there will be more. That's just pretty recent news, I think, from less than a month ago, two weeks ago. So fingers crossed. And the other topic, the other piece of news we wanted to discuss is related to Qumran.
Didn't I send you an English version of it?
Yeah, I just wanted to show some photos from here because other articles do not show any. Well, there is an article you've sent me, but I couldn't open it because I'm not a paid subscriber of Haaretz. And there is a topic from Jerusalem Post, but well, the best photo from there is this one. it illustrates the caves at Qumran, but doesn't illustrate well the topic of manuscripts and things found there. Well, okay, so yeah, Cairo Geniza paper may hold key to secrets of Qumran. Once again, everything is connected. Cairo Geniza once again, and that's the scrolls separated by I don't know how many thousands of kilometers or a bit less, but still.
And actually, they are connected in many ways. There is a text that was found in Cairo Geniza, and that was so unorthodox that nobody knew what to make of it. And then in the 1940s, they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and among them, they found that very text. So some texts from the sect that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls survived well into the Middle Ages.
Okay. Yeah.
And will you talk about what actually the news
I forgot about the piece of news. I thought you wanted to talk about it, or you were supposed to talk about it.
Okay, so the news is that there is a new theory, reinterpretation of the Qumran site, not of the caves themselves, but of the settlement closest to the caves. According to the news and to the press releases, there was always this problem that there wasn't enough proof of people actually living there. There weren't permanent living accommodations. There weren't enough places to eat and wash yourself. There weren't any toilets, and there was no cemetery. And the new theory suggests that it wasn't a permanent settlement, but sort of a pilgrimage site where every member of the sect was supposed to come to once a year. It's like in this scenario, it's likely that all accommodations were temporary, like tents or something of that sort. And this is why we don't find enough proof of that. But as we discussed with Stepan today, we both listened to a lecture course on the Great Courses series,
which are now called something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wondrium.
And that's a great course. And if you're interested in Dead Sea Scrolls and the history of, I think there were two courses. One of on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the other on the early on the Jewish sects of the early centuries of the first millennium. And both of the courses have some information on Dead Sea Scrolls, and there are some guesses of what the buildings of Qumran may have held. Like one of the guesses, as far as I remember, was that it may have been some sort of monastery before there were any monasteries in the Christian way of thinking. But yeah, if you want to learn more, look for the course by the Great Courses. It may be a bit outdated now because I think both of them are something like 10 years old, and well, there are new findings almost every year related to Dead Sea Scrolls, but still there is plenty of information, and it will definitely cover the basics if you're interested.
And in that course, they mentioned an actual cemetery, which all these news articles says there were none. I remember it being mentioned that there were women buried in Qumran, which kind of defies the monastery idea a bit. Uh, you also remembered the fun detail of the toilets.
The toilets were located something like a kilometer or 2 kilometers away because there is this concept of ritualistic
Ritual cleanliness,
cleanliness or cleanness that you cannot defile the places, the sacred places with bodily with consequences of bodily functions and. Thus, you had to go far away to the toilet. And one of the things they were discussing on that course is that, for example, on Sabbath on Saturday, you can go not further away than a certain distance from the place where you are located or where you live. And this place for the toilet was sort of a bit too far away for the people to get there on Sabbath. So there were lots of questions related to that as well, which is amazing in my opinion, because this is what scientists do. If you want to have a lot of fun, just go to science, and archaeology and history, yeah. Anything else, Pavel, or we switch to our next topic?
So that's this one. Yeah, let's go for the sadder news.
No, not the sadder one, but the one about Tsitsi Dangaremgma. Something that we talked. I think we talked about is about something sort of related during our previous or 2 streams ago. Pavel described how pioneers, the Soviet scouts used to bury these capsules with that were sort of sent to the future to be opened in the future 100 years or 50 years from the moment when they were buried. And nowadays some of these capsules are opened, and it's interesting to get to see how these people thought that communism would be achieved by year, I don't know, 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000, something like that. And well, probably it wasn't.
I'm still waiting. There is hope.
But yeah, so there is a different sort of time capsule over here, this piece of news, and Pavel will talk a bit more about this.
So there is this great project called Future Library, where leading authors of our times are asked to contribute an unpublished text that will not be read for 100 years or so. By now, probably the best known name so far was Margaret Atwood, and now Tsitsi Dangaremba also joined the project, and I'm fascinated by it. Imagine your legacy is buried somewhere and waiting. Like, you know how they're still publishing Tolkien's books and Notorious B.I.G.'s albums, that sort of thing. And in 100 years, they'll publish a book by Margaret Atwood and a book by Tsitsi Dangaremba. Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, well, that's interesting at least. We'll see how it goes or not. Yeah, and I wanted to add that once again it connects to our previous podcast, because we had a talk with Rachel Ward Sale, who made a design binding for Tsitsi Dangaremgma's book that was shortlisted for last year's Booker Prize. And if you are interested, go to our website or to our YouTube channel, and you will find the video where we discussed this binding with Rachel Ward-Sale. And it was a great talk. She talked a lot about her creative process, what were the steps to make this binding, to create this design, and what was her thought process. So an interesting talk on its own, and I highly recommend you to watch it if you're interested in bookbinding. Yeah, Pauline is leaving us because it's getting late in Melbourne. Thanks a lot, Pauline, for staying with us for so long. It's almost the end anyway. We have only one or two pieces of news to discuss, and then we're ending our stream. Thanks a lot to everyone who stayed with us or joined at any moment, and we hope to see you next time in 2 weeks on our next live stream, because we plan to stream once every 2 weeks, and we'll see how it goes in the future. So a bit of sad news, as I told, New York International Antiquarian Book Fair cancels its September edition, and that's something that has been happening to different bookish fairs and bookish events throughout this year and a half since the global pandemic started, and for obvious reasons. Some of the fairs went online, some are cancelled, some were postponed and then cancelled. So lots of different things happening, and sometimes it's positive. We also discussed this matter with some of our guests. Some of the online events give new opportunities to bookbinders, for example, and book artists. So this is something that we hope will stay with us in the future, because there is always a chance to mix these formats, online format and offline format, and give more opportunities to bookish people to show and sell their work. But unfortunately, some of the live events are cancelled, because now it's the third, fourth, I don't know, next wave of COVID, and well, there are problems in different regions of the world, so it's quite reasonable that some of the public events have to be cancelled. On the other hand, there is just a couple of days ago, another positive bit of news came from the Netherlands. Last year, Boekkunstbeurs, the book arts fair in Leiden, was cancelled, and I was really upset, because we were sort of almost already preparing to move to a different country then. Not yet, but we already thought about it, and I thought that in 2021 we would move to some other place, I don't know, in Europe or not, and there would be maybe less chance for me to attend next fair in Leiden. And I lived in Leiden, so it was quite easy for me to attend previous two fairs, and I was quite happy for such a happenstance, you know. But the fair was cancelled last year, once again for obvious reason. There was no understanding if it will happen this year. But a couple of days ago, I've got an email from one of the persons who is in charge of the fair, and they plan to run it on the 6th and 7th of November, as usual, early in November, as usual, on a weekend. So if you're interested, I will post the link in the description of the video, or maybe I can post it right now in the chat as well. It's a book arts fair in Leiden. It isn't exclusive to bookbinding. It is made jointly by the Printing Guild of the Netherlands, and I think the Drukwerk in Marke. It's a printing guild that covers both the Netherlands and Belgium, and Stichting iBookBinding, the Society of Hand Binding, of Bookbinding of the Netherlands, is the other organization who is taking part in organizing this fair. And there are sellers of vintage books there. There are some crafts classes for kids and for adults. There are a lot of activities. Everything is happening, at least in the previous years. I hope this year as well, in an old cathedral building in the very center of Leiden, in Peterskerk. That's not a cathedral anymore. It's a place for different events, fairs, and concerts and all that stuff. But still, the place is amazing. It's just I've been selling there for 2 years in a row, and that's an amazing experience. You meet a lot of wonderful people, talk to a lot of wonderful people, see books, prints, bookish objects, book sculptures, pop-up books, I don't know what else. There are something like 200 sellers on this fair, which is pretty a lot, and something like a couple of thousand visitors. So it's a pretty busy place. And well, if you have a chance to visit Europe in November, stay tuned, check the news on the website of the fair, and I hope to see you there, because I hope to be there and sell my tools there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you've met a number of our guests on this fair, right?
Yeah. We've met with Lori Sauer there. We've met with Ben Elbel usually has a table there.
Katya Savelyeva.
Katya Savelyeva, I think she wasn't there for these 2 years. We've met with her on a different fair in Belgium, in St. Nicholas. That's a different fair that was cancelled for 2 years in a row now, and it usually happens in April, and we really hope it will happen in April 2022. But I don't think there are any news about that yet. But yeah, and I will definitely forgot some people and some names, but I've met a lot of wonderful bookish people there. So yeah, highly recommend it. And well, that's a bit of positive news to finish our stream. So thank you everyone who stayed with us. Thanks to all the people who will watch this later.
The sharing of the screen. It's a bit,
you are hypnotized by that.
Yeah. It's a bit much.
Okay, just a moment. Let me. And you can talk while I'm switching this stuff.
I thought I'd show the book by Rachel Ward Sale that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Just for a moment. Here it is. I highly recommend our talk with her, because she walked us through the whole process of how she designed it, how of the techniques, everything. It was really illuminating. It's always fun to hear how people create something like this.
Yeah, that was a great talk, and you can find it either on our website or on our YouTube channel. And well, I think that was nice. We fit in our 90 minutes schedule, I guess, because initially we planned to have the streams 1 hour long, but obviously our previous experience showed us that 60 minutes is not enough. But 90 minutes seems to be this sweet spot where we can discuss a lot of stuff, show you a lot of pictures, and have some fun, and then not to be too tired after the stream. So thanks again. As usual, many thanks to our patrons on Patreon. Please join the crowd either here on Facebook or on YouTube. Become a subscriber, ring the bell, like the video, show it to some of your friends, because this helps a lot to to us to make this project, because of course we just like to share bookish stuff with you, but when we see that we have more and more subscribers, it makes us a bit more happier. So and it's not hard to help us with that. But if you want to support us with your money, there is an opportunity to do this with through Patreon, and pledges start with only $1 per month, and we share nothing special at the moment on Patreon, because previously we shared some books there, but currently we spend all our time working on podcast and some other projects that will be available in the future. But I think podcast is plenty of material, and I hope you like it. So check the links below, and see you next time. And we'll stay for a minute, probably until the buffer goes through Facebook and YouTube. But that's we have a comment on YouTube from Carolina Labbe. Thanks to both of you. Your conversations are very interesting, and you are also nice. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Carolina, and we hope to see you next time. And and I will stop the streams, I guess.
So I shouldn't be ashamed for